Hey, this is April, and this show, SetSet Show, discusses cannabis, psychedelics, and altered states of consciousness generally. It's intended for audiences 21 and over. Also, I am not a medical expert. If you are looking to engage with psychedelic substances, please consult your physician before doing so. Hi, welcome back to SetSet Show. I'm April Pride, your host and CEO of SetSet. Today, I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Joe Robinson, who is the founder of PsiloSafe, an organization that's just jumped ahead of regulation because as decriminalization of psilocybin products is on the rise, there is a need for standardized testing, standardized labeling, so that consumers can have their safest experience. You may be familiar what's happening with, this may be too much information for some listeners, but with 4-ACO-DMT, which is not psilocybin, but is the active ingredient in many of the chocolate products and other products that are sold under the guise of being psychedelic mushrooms. And unfortunately, this year, there have been 2 deaths that are responsible, in which 4-ACO-DMT has been found responsible. So think of it this way. You have 4-ACO, which is a powder, and you've got fentanyl, which is a powder. And there is a cross-contamination that happens in a lab, an underground lab with people who don't care. And Joe and his organization do care. So they have products that are tested, then they, again, created a testing. Joe does care. That's why he created PsiloSafe. He thinks that products, even available outside of the regulated market, the consumer should still have access to safe product. So I am very, very excited to dig into this first part of a 2-part conversation with Joe. And I don't talk much about the psilocybin brand that I did create out of Seattle. Joe is our distributor. I no longer touch the product. I can't sit here and have such open conversations with people if I'm in the business of distributing a Schedule I controlled substance. And Joe has taken on that responsibility so that I can make sure that I'm out here talking to you all with harm reduction education, making sure people are utilizing psychedelic medicine in the safest way possible. So I have a lot of gratitude for Joe. And remember that you can purchase downloads on the SetSet website at getsetset.com, like our ultimate psilocybin guide. So you can get your product from Joe, and you can make sure you know what you're doing thanks to SetSet. I hope you enjoy this first part of my conversation with Joe Robinson. Considering the headlines recently, particularly in California with cannabis and testing and dirty product, and then more and more reports of dirty product within the psilocybin space, I feel like what you have seen all along in terms of what PsiloSafe can offer consumers is what I'd really like to focus on today. And how you chose, I'm a product person, right? So I'd love to learn how you ended up with the product assortment on your website. Again, you can go into as much detail as you feel comfortable with.
Sure.
And yeah, but I think we should talk about why you offer the products that you do and anything that you can offer about the people that created them. Again, protecting those people, the more
Right.
you can know about your source in a way that's, can instill confidence, the more likely you're going to have a better outcome with said substance. Yeah.
Y-
Yeah.
I'm with it 100%.
Cool. Great. So let's start with how we met, which was at Wonderland in Miami in 2023.
hmm
And you have an assortment of products that are in this psychedelic space, really focused on psilocybin. And you came by the booth for Set and wanted to show us what was up. And that's how we met.
Yeah. It was just floating around like booth to booth. I get so bogged down sometimes and like my own agenda and like I had a booth of my own. Yeah. Just being able to float around and make some networking connections and then coming on set and understanding where we had a lot of alignments, both personally, our former professionally, and then what we're doing now. So it was really a wonderful day, match made in heaven in terms of you and I helping each other from a networking perspective, but also from a potential business perspective at some point.
Huh. So then I think what attracted me the most is that you have a background. This is going to really bother me because I don't know why this is happening. So let me just again, try to figure out what's going on with the sound here, because
You're just not getting any of my sound in your headphones.
now I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh,
Now I can. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. I shouldn't hear you on my laptop. I should hear you in
right.
my speakers or my headphones. Yeah. So once I saw the products that you were offering and the seriousness with which you took not only the SKUs themselves, but making sure that they were a quality product for consumers, we started to dig in a little bit into your background and how you ended up at Wonderland, showing me
Yeah.
some psilocybin goods. So if you could, for listeners, yeah, I always like to ask people, like, why should we trust you? What's your background that really has contributed to the passion that you have to bring trusted product to this space?
Yeah, I think it's three things. I'm qualified because I've been in the medical profession for over 2 decades. I was on the big pharma side for a while, which for some people in this space are like, oh my God, the evil empire. And I get it because I was over there for a while, not feeling so good about some of the things that were happening on that side of the business. So I believe that working with sacred earth medicines suits me better, makes me feel better about what I'm doing. So yeah, so that medical background though, regardless, it really helped me about understand different product classes and different patient populations or customer populations that are congruent with those classes. And it helped me understand the importance of education, especially in the field of psychedelics and other entheogenic products. It's such a new concept to so many people that creating the market is everything, and risk mitigation so that something bad doesn't happen and stifle our progress to date is another important thing. It's that educational component, understanding how to communicate benefits of medicine and also how to speak with specific patient populations or customer populations. Somebody with PTSD is going to be a lot different conversation than somebody with anxiety, for instance. So the healthcare background, I think, suits me well into this field. My company's a branding and marketing services company, so we don't manufacture anything per se. We just bring products to market, both for our own in-house portfolio and then for some external customers that we do contract business with. Never claimed to be like an expert cultivator or manufacturer, and I don't look to do that. So I think another trust factor here is that we stick to our knitting in terms of branding, education, go-to-market strategy, training people to talk about these products on the front lines, and we'll stick to our knitting with regards to that. With regards to any of the materials that we have in our own in-house brands, they have been very highly vetted across some of the top producers in the US.
You mean
And
the ingredients for formulation or, yeah.
formulation, practices for formulation, different product categories. We've got a specialist for gummies. We have a specialist for tinctures. We have a specialist for medicated cacao bars. We have a few certified facilities for the raw fruits. Not like we needed to learn how to do this. We brought people in, and your margins are not as good, obviously, because you're sourcing second party white labels. But we believe that it's in the best interest of the end user to do it this way. We stick to what we know best. They stick to what they know best. So those two things, in addition to about a year ago, we sat down and said, who's regulating this? And this is such an important time for psychedelics. What happened in the 60s with the Timothy Leary movement and creating a lot of awareness for this, but doing it in a way that was not very productive to the movement. And it set us back years with having these products in the market for mental health purposes. We want to make sure that doesn't happen this time. And while it is in this kind of gray area, some areas are decriminalized. There's been talk about legalization, blah, blah, blah. We're firm believers that decrim and descheduling is the only way. This is earth-based sacred medicines that have been used for thousands of years. We believe that the medical healthcare system getting involved, it doesn't match up. So with that said, in our small healing communities and some of the decriminalized zones, Oakland, Santa Cruz, some parts of Florida, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Yeah, for those folks that are involved in production, in manufacturing, in any facet, the path to wellness, that there's got to be some type of oversight and regulation. And that's where PsiloSafe comes in as a self-regulating organization or an SRO to just huddle those that are involved and say, what are our best practices? How can we mitigate risk? And what's the best go-to-market strategy with our products to make sure that the customers are receiving clean, safe, and effective medicine? So those 3 points I would say would be reasons why folks would want to work with me or work with our organization, because we really are in it for what we believe are the only reasons. Psychedelic movement's great, but I think that getting involved with real healing initiatives and having community-based healing initiatives and working with the practitioners and the medicine and the facilitators and the integrators all together is really going to give us the best opportunity to maximize this next wave of the Renaissance.
So let's go back to the first reason, which is your background in pharmaceuticals. When you say you became more aware of different classes of drugs and also the different consumer groups that need, what do you mean by classes of drugs?
So drug classes. So the most, people say notorious, but it's
Like
been,
pain medication
yes,
versus,
pain medication
okay,
and it's healthier, that's SSRIs.
okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole too deep with you. I've got some
Sure.
very,
I just wanted to make sure that listeners understood what a class of drug meant. Yeah.
yeah. So class of drugs. So a class would be, pain meds, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, cholesterol drugs,
Sure.
very widely prescribed and recommended. My issue with the pharma model is I don't see that it's working for an end point. I think it's a lot of management of symptoms with no addressing of the problem. And that's in the mental health space with SSRIs. For some people, they work great. I'm not going to downplay all of pharma and Western medicine, because I think
Sure.
that medicine has a very important part in all of our situations. As I said, I just fractured a clavicle 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
So it really made me think a lot more about where I stand with that. And I think that it all works very well together. Western medicine, some prescription medications, some treatment protocols can work very well together. But there's also this whole side of the sacred earth medicine, plant medicines that have been used for way longer
Mhm.
than any of this patented prescription stuff has. And there's a balance that can be met between the two. And so that's where I think we're trying to provide clean, safe, and effective medicines on this side of the fence that can be worked in conjunction with, say, some of those aforementioned classes. For me, I try to stay off of as many pharmaceuticals as I can. This is one of the most painful injuries you can sustain.
Yes. Yeah.
And I took I took 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol one day, but I was offered pain meds from my friends, of course. Like, I've got some left over from this, or
Totally. Yeah.
said, no, I'm good. I'll grunt through it. I've seen what's happened with the opiate class, for instance, and some of the benzos. And I'm just like, dog,
Yeah.
limb that's been chopped off. I think I'm good. That's just me. I try to stay like on the naturopath side of things and find natural solutions. But yeah, so drug class, I would say that apps and Lycos bringing the FDA stage 3 to light, huge advancement that didn't really go the way that a lot of people thought it would and should.
Mhm.
And that I'll talk about later, but still, they brought a psychedelic class of drugs to the FDA. They have a wonderful protocol out there that seemed to be working very well. And as long as there's access to clean, safe, and effective MDMA in this case,
Yeah.
there's hundreds of MDMA psychotherapists that are now trained.
Trained. Yeah. Yeah.
Protocol, we've got clean meds,
Mhm.
we've got people. Do we need the FDA's nod on that? Or, I don't know. I think it seems to be working out pretty well. But to the point, bringing that to light and bringing that to the surface and giving people hope that this kind of gray market class will continue to be used as they are right now in the gray market, and can start to get some notoriety, maybe some acceptances and approvals from the powers that be to make them more broadly available as a good adjunct or substitute to the classes of drugs that are out there already for mental health.
Yes. It's interesting having worked in cannabis. There aren't a lot of studies. There are more studies in cannabis than there were 10 years ago when I first started working in that space. And one of the things that I found the most interesting, both anecdotally talking to people who grew their own medicine to treat health conditions. And I like to say that cannabis treats symptoms, whereas psychedelics can treat the root cause, right? And when you grow your own, the effectiveness, as reported by so many people that took the time to grow their own plants, was just night and day as compared to if you went to a store and bought it, right? So creating that relationship with your medicine allows the medicine to get to know you and to work in a way that is very personalized. That's fascinating to me. And so then on top of that, there's clinical research that shows that the closer the medicine is to the natural compound, the more effective it is, not only to treat the symptom or the root cause, but also the duration of the subsiding of symptoms. So it just is more effective, the whole arc of the experience. And so that, of course, must also be the case for natural psilocybin, right? Or MDMA from sassafras, or that's not possible, but I think you get the point. The closer to nature we are. And the only way for the pharmaceutical market or the pharmaceutical industry for it to work is if they synthesize something that's not the natural so they can have the IP on that, register it, and make the money that they need to make because research is expensive. And so we already know that we're going to be saying yes to an inferior product as soon as a natural compound is synthesized. I find that interesting.
Yeah. There's a study that was recently dropped. I think it's just a one of one, but it looked at the synthetic psilocybin versus the natural. And from a therapeutic perspective, it's the organic that really comes up. And to the point I made earlier, I'm a believer that plants and nature and fungi that are our God-given right should just be decriminalized and descheduled. Come on with it. This is stuff that can be produced in your backyard, or if you have a home kit and you're cultivating your own medicine and you're administering your own medicine and you're running your own show, that's a beautiful thing. That's real humans. That's real human. That's freedom. I think that like all of these synthetics should be decriminalized. I think synthetics and lab made stuff should stick with through the channels of pharmaceutical and FDA approvals and all that. But for the natural substances, it's just, it just doesn't make sense to put those products through the Western medical model. The Western medical model is really about a business. It's about an institution. It's profitability. It's not really about customer, the patient in all of the ways. And I'll bring it back to when I was in pharma. I just found it very interesting that the drug discovery process involved like marketing people and go to market people. And I was like, so much more important things that we could be going after than like boner pills.
Yeah. Like vagina pills.
When Viagra came out, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do know what you're saying.
Lifestyle stuff out there that this is great, but how many other people are suffering, even like these like smaller patient populations for some of these rare disorders? And you have to take it for what it's worth. The pharmaceutical industry is a behemoth, and the pharma industry and the government work really well together, and they're hand in glove. And there's a lot of good stuff that's being done there. But I regress back to the whole, just let us have nature out here in our own communities. There's a lot of very capable, passionate, interested people that are starting to emerge with the psychedelics movement that want to administer high dose mushrooms in the comfort of their own home. They're safe, they're vetted, they're experienced. Low dose microdosing. I'm with the microdosing collective out of Los Angeles. Paul Austin is one of the founders there from Third Wave, and they're making a real big push to get that, at least get that legalized. Home use of sub-perceptual psilocybin. There's such a small ask, and so it's being done anyway. And nothing's going to stop the movement. So
it is being done anyway. As a person we can get into the complexities of how I'm trying to launch this platform that's not allowed, being censored at the moment, but it's clinically backed information for me. And unfortunately, we just don't have the scientific evidence that microdosing does anything beyond placebo. I feel like for the sake of protecting consumers, I mentioned this on a call with you before, that there is evidence that long-term use of psilocybin may create heart issues over time. And so having worked in the cannabis space and jumped the gun in terms of what we gave consumers access to before we really understood the consequences I am very nervous about, oh, you can't feel it, so just take it. It's fine, if we don't know if it could create issues down the road for cardiovascular concerns. We really do need more evidence before we ask our politicians to approve legislation. We just do, because that's a very slippery slope. And I'm not going to disrupt the cause, but I think we have to ask more questions and have a lot of integrity when it comes to standing side by side with the science. So, as much as I believe in what the Microdosing Collective is trying to do, because I've heard transformative stories from so many people that have microdosed, I wish that we could have these larger pharmaceutical companies working in the space fund research so that we can tell consumers what is going on for them, and they can make a really educated decision for themselves. But right now, it's just like cannabis. We've talked to all these people. This is what's working for them, but we don't really have any longitudinal studies on it. Yeah, I think consumers and listeners to this show should understand like what the science and what all the facts actually are, and then make your own decision. Because if you have a heart condition or your family has a genetic predisposition to some sort of heart condition, just like with bipolar and psychosis and other mental health issues, you need to know your family background before you say yes to psychedelic medicine. But it's beyond, mental health diagnosis. It's also cardiovascular. We understand now too. So,
And what is it? Is that high doses cardiovascular risk?
say it again.
I said high dose cardiovascular. I'm not sure that I understand the cardiovascular risk was.
Yeah. So they're saying there is evidence that with repeated use of psilocybin over the course of decades, so people that have been taking it at any dose on a regular basis, that there's a thinning of the arteries over time. And there hasn't been a dedicated research study to this. There's only been preliminary evidence, people that go in and have heart conditions, and this is part of their history, their behavior. We just don't know. And I just bring these things to light because I want people who have the resources or a lab to do some of the research to understand, a lot of people are microdosing psilocybin. Can we get some answers for these people's stat? Really, that's all we want. So
I think a longitudinal study on the mRNA vaccines would be more important at this stage. We have like hundreds of millions of people on that stuff, and I don't know that we have any data. And I don't know if there's a myocarditis situation there. So I think just in a prioritization perspective, I think that I think this stuff's a little bit more nascent, or I'm concerned as what happened there in 2020, 2021. But I agree with you. Like, this kind of stuff needs to be studied. It's where does the priority go? I would think for the pharmaceutical companies, especially that made tens of billions of dollars off of that particular therapy, that would be the most important longitudinal study to put into play right now.
They're not going to do that. There's no way. Yes, I think that your thinking is exactly the right thing for the consumer, which is why we're lucky that you have put so much passion, time, and your own resources into PsiloSafe. You wanted to get to answers too. So some of the headlines,
Something to think about. I'm not that worried about a longitudinal study for the heart conditions. I would think that for me and within PsiloSafe, when we're looking at different patients, so we would just recommend that if you have a history of heart issues or specific heart conditions, AFib or something else, that maybe you would not want to be the first line of treatment. Just like disorders, if you're on like lithium, or if like you've had like a history of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, taking a high dose psychedelic, especially like in a solo setting with no upwork and with no oversight, that's potential for a disaster. I think with PsiloSafe, what we're looking at is three pillars. It's safety for the consumer, safety for the manufacturer, and safety for the producer. And so with the consumer, it's to have a screening device, and we're working with someone that's doing a technology play to have a screener to understand who's in and who's out. For instance,
what does that mean? What does that mean, a screening device? Yeah.
Like some type of a screening tool, like an app or at least a survey.
So to screen themselves as a candidate.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
And I think to your point, somebody that's got a history of a heart condition is probably somebody that we want to rule out until they get seen by a medical professional.
Yeah. Same with ketamine. Like, no. Yeah.
Same type of mind or mood altering disorders or mind or mood altering, heavy mood altering drugs. Probably want to keep them off as well. Underage. We really stress the fact to the people that work with us is we're not in the business of giving kids drugs. And so making sure that the products and packaging are suitable for that and interesting to that customer segment is important, but that's another there. I think like from the practitioner and the facilitator perspective, like making sure that people are safe to work with, like they
Yes.
have a type of credential and they have some type of backing from other people. There are very weird people all over the world and some
Mm.
funky things can happen when people are under the influence of this stuff.
Thank you for joining us for today's show. I'm April, and I'll be back the next installment of SetSet Show, where we cover everything you need to have a safe, supported psychedelic experience in the wild.